say a few words of what you believe a smart grid is. What's a smart grid?
Saving energy, so our plan doesn't go to waste, I guess.
All right. What would you say?
Turning off the lights and saving energy.
Okay. Saving power.
Well, kind of like turning off electricity and saving it so we can have bright energy to
Okay.
turning off lights switches and computers. Basically turning off stuff to replace it. Coming up with new technology to save energy. Save energy so we don't pollute air. It helps us figure out how to save energy. Saving and storing energy with home water use. Reducing energy usage and to bigger cities.
Well, we kind of all agreed that it had something to do with energy conservation. And I agree with that. But here's what the smart grid sort of means to me. One time I was visiting with my father, and he was the son of Montana homesteaders. And I asked him, Dad, what was the biggest change in your life when rural electrification came to the farm? And he thought about it for a little bit. He said, well, the rural electrification was part of the New Deal, and the proposition was that we had electricity in all of the big cities. We even had electricity in the medium-sized towns. But in the small towns of Montana, and certainly the farms, it wasn't a paying proposition for the electricity companies to bring electric wires to all of the farms and the towns with only 100 people in it. And so they created the electric co-op system so that farmers could create a cooperative, and together they could pool their resources and they could get federal loans. And they built these wires that would bring electricity to their farms in small towns. But he said, but the question really was, what was the biggest change in my life when rural electrification came to the farm? And it really surprised me, the answer. He said, I guess it was that we could weld at a little warmer temperature. Because on his farm, and farms all over Montana, going all the way back to the 20s, 25 years or 30 years before rural electrification brought copper wires to their farm, they had wind turbines. They had wind turbines on all of those farms. And they had batteries, so that when the wind wasn't blowing, they had the ability of using electricity anyway. And he said it was a pretty good system back in the 20s and 30s, but the problem with the system was the batteries. They were expensive, they didn't last that long, and every once in a while they blew up. That's kind of the problem that we have today. When we talk about storing the energy from the time where we have a lot of energy to the time that we don't. And a smart grid to me means this. It starts with the utility company, recognizing that the value of electricity is different in the middle of the day than it is in the middle of the night. Because you see, in the middle of the night, most of us are sleeping, we have our lights off, we're not using our computers, we're not at work, and so there's a lot less electricity that's being used. And so, in the middle of the day, a lot of us are using electricity for doing all the things that we do at school and at work. And so, the grid is pushed to its capacity. Some of those days, we barely have enough lines to deliver all the electricity that people are using. And then, in the middle of the night, we're using about half of the electricity. And so what we'd like you to do as consumers is we would like you to consume more electricity off-peak. Now, here's what you would do. You would think about this a little bit. If the utility company themselves, if they charged you less money for the electricity that you used in the middle of the night than when you use it in the middle of the day, you would change your behavior, wouldn't you? Let's start with your refrigerator. You would set that refrigerator to not do nearly as much cooling during the day as it does at night. And you would get it a little bit colder at night night and then store that cold on through the day. You would do that. You would think about when it is that you would turn certain appliances on, or how you would use appliances, when you washed your clothes and when you dried them. You think, if I'm paying twice as much for my electricity at 10 o'clock in the morning to do my laundry as I did at 10 o'clock at night, how many of you would use it at night? So it starts with the utility company themselves having a different rate of electricity. And then you as consumers, each one of you, you will find ways at home to use less electricity during the day and more of it at night. And so you would be conserving electricity, but the other thing that you would be doing is taking these peaks and valleys out, because oftentimes these utility companies, they generate electricity pretty much the same in the day as they do in the night, and well, it's an inefficient system. But if you have the ability of allowing them to shut down some of their production during the night and ramp back up in the day, that's a smart grid. And that's a better use of our electricity. And I think someone has addressed that in terms of storage. We don't have a shortage of energy in this country. We have a lot of energy in this country. We're blessed because we have a lot of coal in Montana, and we have a lot of natural gas and even oil. But in addition to that, we have wind power and solar power. You know, they did a study at a university back east called Harvard University, and did anybody go to Harvard University? I wouldn't admit it either. So, this university, they studied all of the states in the Union, and they concluded that there was only one other state that had the capacity of producing more electricity with wind power than Montana. Now, this university is not very good with math, and so they claim Texas could produce more electricity than Montana. We know that's not true. But here's what they also found. They found that the amount of electricity that we could produce in Montana is so great that if everybody in America had an electric car, everybody who had a car, or even a pickup, or an SUV, if everybody in America had one of those cars that was running on electricity, the wind power of Montana would be enough to run all of them. All of them. And of course we have solar capacity. And so it means that if we use our resources, if we produce our resources in a smarter way, we'll have more people working in Montana producing that energy, more people in Montana with higher paying jobs because the price of our energy will be less, and there will be fewer of us who have to fight wars someplace in countries that you can't pronounce because they have a petro-dictator and they sell us oil. That's how important this is. It's good for your future in terms of jobs, it's good for the air and water, and it's good for every one of our communities because we won't send you off to some place that it can stand. So, I thank you for being participants, I thank you for being winners, and I thank you for being students who believe in the future and believe that science and math is the way to the future. Because it's not politicians that change the world. Politicians talk about changing the world. It's scientists and engineers and innovation and ideas that change the world. And each of you are leading in innovation. Thank you very much. So we're going to give these awards. I don't have a Sharpie, but somebody has a Sharpie. I'll bet Jason has a Sharpie.